Hi, how are you? So today's video is going to be the first in what I hope to make into a series about different kinds of bedding that you can use for your rats. And I decided to make these individually in a pros and cons format, so that way you can make the best decision with the information for your pets. I am not going to be endorsing any one of these in the videos, at least I'm going to try not to. I will tell you what I use in each video and how I've made some of these things work and why I don't recommend some of them, but I want to let you make that decision for your pets. So stay tuned. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about fleece bedding. I feel like it's important for me to mention that I did use fleece for several years with my rats. You can tell this if you look back in some of my older cage tour videos. The reasoning for that is long and detailed, but you'll also notice if you look at my new videos that I don't use fleece any longer. I personally don't recommend fleece for reasons which we'll cover in this video, but there are situations in which fleece is really necessary, and I want you to be able to use it in the safest way possible for your animals. That way you can decide what you want to do. You can make fleece work for rats, I will just add that. However, it is very high maintenance, and we'll talk about all that here. So the pros for fleece are that it is dust free. If you have a rat that is extremely sensitive to dust, fleece is great for this. It is reusable, but I'm going to add conditionally to this because you do have to mend it. You have to notice if it's been chewed and fix that right away, because the longer you leave it, the more it's going to get chewed. It is soft, which a lot of people find really important for their rats. It's very fluffy and it's aesthetically pleasing. It's allergy friendly. If you or your rats happen to have an allergy to certain types of wood, fleece can possibly be a good solution. It also is really good in hospital cages because it doesn't get stuck to the surgery area, whereas bedding of other kinds can actually get caught in those areas and cause infections. The cons, however, slightly outweigh the pros. The first is that if you're using it with an absorbent material, because fleece by itself is not absorbent at all, you have to change it every other day to every 3 days. And if you're using it all alone, because of its lack of absorbency, you will have to change it daily. This is because it doesn't help control ammonia. Other kinds of beddings will not only absorb moisture, but they actually help ammonia to dissipate into the air and away from your rats, whereas fleece does not have that ability. It also needs mended often, as I mentioned. I found with my previous mischief that used fleece, I had to change it exactly on the 2 to 3 day mark, or else they would continue to chew it and the holes would be so big that it was very difficult to repair. If you catch it when they're just nibbling it, much easier to mend. If you do not make your own fleece liners, it is quite expensive because of the cost of materials going up, because of the cost to pay someone to make them, and the shipping and things like that. It can just be quite expensive to use fleece bedding for your rats. It doesn't allow your rats to exhibit natural foraging behaviors like digging, and because of that, it's really difficult to give them extra enrichment like scatter feeding. You would have to then do other things such as provide a dig box or foraging toys or things like that in order to enrich your rats' lives and make it appropriate. It's also not environmentally friendly. There are some studies that show that it will actually leak microparticles, I think that's the right term, into water when washed. So we keep getting fabrics pushed at us because they're reusable, and while that's true, that doesn't always make them the best option for our environment. So that's something you really want to consider if you're trying to go for an eco-friendly option. Fleece is probably not going to be the best choice for you. If you're using fleece alone, you will also need to sweep it and straighten it regularly. I think I was doing this like 2 or 3 times a day, and this was really easy because my rats were in my main living area. So every time I walked past, I just straightened it up a little bit, swept all the poops into the litter box, and that was good. It's also best to have your rats litter trained, but even if they are litter trained, they're still gonna mark and they're still gonna poop occasionally where they're not supposed to. So litter trained rats doesn't mean you can make the fleece stretch longer. Just FYI. All right, the last thing I wanted to add is some pro tips, because I did use fleece for 2.5 years, almost 3 years with my One Mischief, and I did so successfully. So I thought maybe these tips might help you all if you do choose to use this. The first thing is definitely make them with some sort of absorbency. It is just so much easier, and it'll make it stretch a little longer, which gives you a little bit of a buffer between changing the cage out. I personally used fleece, then 3 layers of flannel, and then a layer of fleece on top. The next thing is your rats are going to chew them. This is normal rat behavior. Please don't try to prevent it entirely. And they will also try to burrow underneath, which is extremely normal. The next thing is don't attempt to strap them to the pans. This just creates a challenge that they will try to get underneath. And they will also tend to chew around whatever you use to fasten them to the pans, such as binder clips or elastic loops or that sort of thing. Instead, I made mats and I just laid them on my tray or in my pan, and that worked so much better. It made cleaning easier. I just shook them off a little bit, straightened them out. Easy peasy. Another thing you can try is a sacrificial blanket. This can be a scrap of fleece that's fairly large, or one of those inexpensive Walmart blankets that you can just throw in on top of the fleece mat. This gives them something to burrow in and chew on, and helps prevent them from wanting to go after the actual mat that's on the cage. I would also recommend that you get a small hand broom and dustpan. I find these to be really helpful with cleaning fleece. I got mine from the dollar store initially, and my next one came from, I think, Kroger. Just is so much easier to keep it near the cage and just sweep it up real quick. You can also use a small hand vac or dust buster, and those work great too. My last tip is to have at least 3 sets of fleece. Most people say 2, but I would recommend at least 3, if not 4 or 5, because you're changing every 2 to 3 days. Plan to change every 2 and have enough to do that so that you can change and then wash half of it and still have some in reserve to use the next time. I just find that to be so much easier. Also keep in mind, health issues come up, and if you have a stomach bug or are feeling under the weather and can't do anything besides change out the fleece, you want to be able to do that quickly and not have to worry about, is it going to get washed in time? Is it going to get dried in time? And all of that nonsense. Just have some extra on hand. And like I said earlier, definitely make a dig box, because digging is a natural behavior and we don't want to prevent our rats from doing things that they naturally do and enjoy. So a dig box with coconut soil or something like that, something doesn't have to be huge, but roughly about this tall, with a lid and a hole in the top so they can climb in it, dig, and then climb out. This can be in the cage or out of the cage if your rats get regular playtime out of the cage. I am also going to leave links below to my video tutorials on how to make your own cage mats and how to mend them. So definitely check those out. I think that's all for right now. So thanks for watching. Bye! And stay tuned for the next video in this series.